Hey guys, Rich here from Custom Tech, and I'm going to be doing a short series. I'm going to be putting myself in the shoes of a beginner who's looking to get into PC gaming and is just overwhelmed with all of the information that's there on the net or on websites when they're browsing PC parts, etc. So hopefully by the end of the series you will have a better knowledge to aid you in buying the right components that suit you for your build that you intend to do. So today we're going to start with motherboards. I have one here. This is a AMD motherboard. One thing all motherboards are going to share in common, so you don't need to worry about when looking for one, is they're all going to have input and output connectors. They're all going to have PCI connectors, and they're all going to have RAM connectors or memory modules, and they're all going to have CPU sockets of some form. Now, the two most important things to look at when purchasing a motherboard, in my eyes, is size, or form factor as it's known. So, if you don't have a lot of room and you've got a small desk, or you live with your parents in your bedroom and you don't have a lot of room, then maybe you're looking at a cube case or a micro ATX or mini ATX. Make sure you get a board that's compatible. You don't want to go and buy a small case and find that this, a full-size ATX board, or even an eATX that they make, even larger, doesn't fit in your case. After that, probably the most important thing, but to me they're both important, is socket compatibility. This that I'm using just as a prop and an aid to talk you around features of any motherboard is an AM3 socket from AMD, which is going to support the FX series chipset, or processor, which is the 8350s, the 8320s, the 9550. The top end chip. If you're going Intel, then obviously you want to be looking at, let's say you're going to go for a new Skylake, then you're going to be looking at a socket which is 1151. So make a decision, depending on your budget, of what processor you intend to buy, and then check the processor socket and make sure you get a compatible motherboard, because it's no good buying this if you're going to buy an Intel chip and then going, they just don't fit together. It's going to give you a bad experience. So make sure you check the socket compatibility against the processor and motherboard you intend to buy to make sure they work properly. A question I'm asked a lot is, I've brought a graphics card, it's Gen 3, which if you're building a computer around the time of this video being made, all graphics cards now are Gen 3. If your budget can only allow you to afford an AMD setup, then you're going to find that they're Gen 2. The PCI Express slots are going to be Gen 2 or Gen 3. Intel boards support Gen 3, but don't fear if you brought yourself a Gen 3 graphics card, which, like I say, they all are, but you can only afford an AMD processor or motherboard and it's Gen 2, they are going to work. Gen 3 is backwards compatible. The only difference is they've got a faster speed. The socket layout is exactly the same. The card will fit in either Gen 2 or Gen 3. It's just the speeds, and the latest graphics cards currently still don't maximise the speed capabilities of Gen 2. So, there's a word that every PC gamer or PC enthusiast hates, which is bottleneck. You see it on forums and on the internet everywhere. Someone's like, don't buy that processor, it's going to bottleneck your card, and etc, etc. That's a whole different video altogether. But the Gen 2 will not bottleneck your graphics card at all. So, if you can only afford AMD, like I say, you've got a Gen 3 graphics card, don't panic, it will work. The other thing I'm asked is, how many graphics cards can I have? AMD and Nvidia at the time of making this can only support 4-way Crossfire and SLI. The additional slots that you're going to find on your motherboard don't mean you can have 5, 6, 7, 8 graphics cards. What it means is that you can have additional peripherals or expansion cards like sound cards, Wi-Fi cards, network cards, PCI Express SSDs, which are now becoming quite popular. So the extra slots you're going to have is for your additional add-on cards. The other thing to look out for is you're going to have X1, you're going to have X4, X8 and X16. Now what therefore is X1 is going to be for Wi-Fi cards and expansion cards, and then the X4 and X8 refers to if you were doing 2-way or 3-way SLI or Crossfire or even 4-way, then that determines what your cards run in. Different boards all boards vary, but you usually find that your top slot is times 16, and then when you start adding additional cards, they'll go like times 8, times 8, times 4, or or they could be all times 8 when running additional cards in Crossfire or SLI. Another thing is a common question I'm asked is, do I need quad channel or dual channel RAM? What that means is AMD, for this board for example, currently only support on all of their boards, FM2, AM3, they only support dual channel RAM. What that means is you can have 2 RAM sticks per channel, totaling 4. Whereas X99, the 2011 V3 socket by Intel, their highest enthusiast platform, that supports quad channel, which means you'll have 4 RAM slots on either side of the socket is their usual layout, and that means you can have 4 sticks of RAM per channel. So again, look at what board you intend to buy and processor, and that will help you determine do you need quad or dual channel, because it will state what you can run. Another thing to look out for when it comes to buying RAM that's compatible with any motherboard you intend to buy is the rated speed. This AM3 Sabertooth R3, which is AMD's top board at the moment for the FX chips, is only supports a maximum of 1866 megahertz. They all vary. The new Skylake platform, DDR4 and DDR4 on X99, they support all the way up to like 4000 megahertz. So check your board, make sure you check what rated speed it is at before you go and purchase your RAM. It's no good buying like 2400 megahertz RAM if it's not going to be compatible. There is a way that you can underclock it, but if you are building your first PC, then we don't need to get into overclocking or underclocking, so it's better to just buy RAM that is suited to your motherboard. Another thing when choosing a board is aesthetics. It's not that important, but if you're like me, I like all of my builds to sort of tie in colour scheme wise. So go for a board that goes for your colour scheme. But again, that's pretty self-explanatory, but I thought I would just touch on it briefly. And then obviously your connectors. Here we can see we have 5 SATA connectors, which are 6 gigabits a second. They are for connecting your hard drives or SSDs or conventional hard drives. So let's say you want a computer with tons of storage and you've got 8 hard drives, but you've only got 5 slots. Then obviously this board isn't going to be best suited to your needs. So bear in mind how many hard drives you intend to run. 5 is going to be plenty for anyone building their first PC. It's more than I use even, but be mindful of that. Other features you might want to take advantage of. The reason I chose this AM3 board is because it's very similar to what is commonly found on most Intel boards by standard now, and it's this new feature called M.2. It's a faster form of for SSDs, onboard SSDs, rather than using a SATA connector, which is only 6 gigabits a second. M.2s actually run 20 gigabits a second, so they're a more... You find them commonly now on most boards, and it's just a faster speed or faster style of storage device. So have a look for that if it's something you intend to add into your build. Another thing, if you intend to overclock, this is more aimed at overclockers, but let's say you've got a test bench or you intend to do a lot of overclocking. One thing that comes with overclocking is something you can never get away from is blue screens and lockups while trying to dial in that overclock. And a lot of boards, like I say, this is their top end board, so it's aimed for overclocking, for their more powerful chips. Things to look out for are dedicated power and reset switches, and also CMOS, which resets your BIOS to default. So these features can be quite handy for me when I'm overclocking. I can use these features rather than using the case's power and reset buttons. So that's something to be mindful of. The clear CMOS, what you would have to do when overclocking before was remove the battery, but with aftermarket PCB or aftermarket graphics cards now from the manufacturers like MSI, Asus, Gigabyte, etc., their cards take up what they call dual slot. They're really fixed, so it sometimes hides the battery on your motherboard. So that's why they've implemented the clear CMOS button. What you'd have to do years ago was whip the battery out for 30 seconds, but now you've got a dedicated button which you can press. So if you intend to overclock, that's a feature to look out for. A lot of boards now support, we've got your fan connectors, so look at the case you intend to use as well and how many fans you intend to use in it, because you'll find some lower end boards only have maybe 2 or 3 fan headers, and then you're going to have to use things like fan controllers or splitters, additional ways of powering your fans. The higher end boards, you tend to find they've got fan connectors dotted everywhere around the board. And you'll also find a new feature now for this refreshed AM3 board, but Intel support it on some of their higher end boards, is a dedicated water pump header. So if you intend to, go water cooling, be it custom cooling or an all-in-one cooler like the Corsair H100 for example, they've actually got a dedicated fan header now, a PMW, which means you can adjust the pump speed so you can get a balance between performance and noise. So that's something to look out for if you intend to do some form of water cooling. Also check, this board does have, but my Asus Formula 8 on my Skylake setup, they've actually done away with USB 2. Now the reason I touch on this when picking a board is, some of the newer boards now, USB 2 is starting to be done away with. And for example, I've got a Logitech G27 racing wheel that I use for my racing simulator, and that doesn't like USB 3. So if the board you intend to buy has only got USB 3, check the peripherals you tend to buy, your USB peripherals, and make sure that they will work on USB 3, because if your case doesn't support front USB 2 like mine, and then your board doesn't have it like my board, then you could find, issues with your peripherals not working correctly. Like my G27 doesn't like USB 3 and it just does all sorts of crazy things. So check what peripherals you intend to use and make sure they're compatible with your board. Other things to look out for is just eye candy really. This actually supports Asus's Aurora RGB lighting, which does the PCI slots. They light up and you can change the colours to suit the aesthetics of your build. But again, they're not important features, they're just additional features that do add a little bit of price to when buying a board. So if you're on a budget, they may be something that you can't quite get. You may have to go for a lower end board. But hopefully guys, with this first video in the series of how to buy parts for a new build if you're a new builder, hopefully I've armed you with a bit of knowledge here that is going to aid you in making the right choice when it comes to buying your first components. And if you like the video, hit subscribe. It really helps me in the channel. It helps me deliver you new content. If you liked it, hit that like button. If you didn't, hit the dislike and drop down in the comments what you didn't like about it. That also helps me so I can change my approach to my videos to bring future content to you in a way that more suits your needs and style. I'm always willing to adapt, and at the end of the day I'm trying to arm you guys with knowledge, and if you feel I'm not delivering it correctly, then let me know and I'm more than happy to change to, I want to bring people useful information. I'm really passionate about PCs, and I want to, the more people I can bring into it, it's exciting and frustrating and all in one go. There's going to be times where you pull your hair out, but I can assure you, by the time you've built it, you've put it together and you've got it sat there and you're looking at it, you can say, I achieved that. It's a really fulfilling accomplishment, and PC gaming is really fun and beneficial. So hopefully I've armed you with some new information that's going to help you, and I will see you in the next video.